And 20 minutes after the second plane crash, when nearly all the jet fuel had been burned up, the buildings just seemed to explode, throwing steel girders weighing hundreds of tons for hundreds of feet, burying them into buildings on the other side of the street. Virtually all of the fuel from the planes had been consumed in the first 20 minutes. Where did all this explosive force come from? But most of all, the engineers were disturbed by the apparent collapse of the enormously strong central core of the towers. An indestructible rectangle of 47 box beam columns made with 4-inch thick steel at the base, tied together with a tight net of more steel girders and trusses, making up the backbone of the World Trade Center. Even if the floors had pancaked around it, after the floors collapsed, we should have seen the central core standing tall, rising out of the smoke. And we do see parts of the core, for a moment, standing in the smoke, before they simply evaporate inexplicably. Buildings have pancaked in the past, but they looked like this, not like this. Why do we see no floors pancaked on top of each other? And so people began to look more closely at the video of the collapse, and they began to see more evidence that something else was going on, that the buildings had been taken down not by exploding planes, but by explosive charges planted in the building. In a professional demolition, you see what are called squibs, where the explosives occasionally vent their explosive force out the side of the building. And sure enough, when you look, you can see squibs going off all over. The specialized explosive used by professionals to demolish a steel frame is called thermate. It is placed in key locations and melts large steel joints in an instant, which is precisely what we see here. Look closely at this photograph. This is one of the box girders of the central core. Look at it. It's been clearly melted. Although jet fuel does not create anything near the heat necessary to melt steel, the physicists and engineers began to find evidence of large amounts of molten steel pouring out of the side of the building, pouring down into the basement, creating incredible temperatures, 1100 degrees at the top of the rubble pile 6 weeks later.
Out still on the rubble, it's still, I believe, 1100 degrees. The guy's boots just melt within a few hours.